Chapter 16. Nick spent the better part of Friday patrolling the streets of Callahan. Even though it was raining, he needed the time to think without feeling as if the walls were closing in on him. The problem with Callahan was that most offenses were usually committed when the weather was nice. On rainy days, like today, offenders were probably holding out until the sun came out again. Nevertheless, without any solid leads on this Rico Argela person, Nick wasn't sure how to go about tracking him down, especially since he was up in New York, clearly out of Nick's jurisdiction. Without a last name to attach to Vincent, all Nick had was a hunch, telling him that it was the same jerk who had proposed to his little sister. There was no real proof to support it, only a few coincidences here and there. He could have gotten more evidence had he been able to use Michelin's scanner to tap Vincent's calls, but without his phone number and a last name, it was a dead end. Friday evening, Nick sat in conference with Chase's algebra teacher, Mrs. Keeler. Chase had managed to duck out of sight, having caught a glimpse of Ripa and her parents, who were waiting for their turn to speak with one of Ripa's teachers. The guilt of being a bad father returned with the accusatory tone of Chase's teachers, suggesting that Chase spend more time with his grandparents to ensure that he got the parental stability he needed. After a few more moments of torture, the evening ended on a high note from Chase's PE teacher, who concluded that Chase had made the highest vertical jump in the entire 11th grade class. The news was enough to bring a proud fatherly grin to Nick's face while Chase acted as though it was really no big deal. That night, Nick sat on the sofa staring up at the ceiling in boredom. After tucking Allie into bed and reading her a story, there wasn't anything left to do. Chase had spent the time since they returned talking on the phone to Ripa. Gathering what Nick heard from the arguing done on Chase's part, things weren't going any better now than they had gone at school. Nick knew that if he hadn't been the cause of their breakup in the first place, perhaps Chase would have come to him for advice. But who did Nick have to talk to when things were bothering him with Michelin? Then it occurred to him, Michelin's leaving was his fault too. Nick frowned. "Ripa hates me," Chase said, coming into the living room and dropping into the armchair.
"Oh, Chase, I'm sorry,"
Nick managed.
"She is so stubborn. All she ever thinks about is herself. I mean, what'd I ever see in her?" "Then it's okay that she's gone, right? You're better off without her? Is that what you're saying?"
Nick asked. For the first time since Susan left, Nick saw the tears gathered in his son's eyes.
"Yeah, Dad. It's a good thing she's gone. I mean, you're right. Not about everything. I know that you cared about Ripa. If I know you, you still do. It's okay."
"What am I supposed to do? I've tried talking to her. I don't know what else to do."
"Then don't do anything. When she's ready, she'll come back to you."
"And what if she doesn't?" Chase's eyes fastened upon Nick's.
"Then you have to forgive her and move on."
"You know, Dad, I always blamed you for making Mom leave. I guess I needed to blame somebody. What was the point in blaming her when she wasn't here to hear it? So they left you. I'm sorry."
"We did okay, didn't we?"
"Yeah, we did."
"We're Morans. We're tough."
Nick sat as Chase chuckled. "How's the case going?"
"Not as well as I'd like."
"I haven't seen Miss Stone around lately. I kind of get the feeling that you like her."
"She's a nice lady."
"Then why don't you ask her out?"
"It's more complicated than that."
"Are you just saying that because it makes it easier to do nothing?"
"It's been such a long time since I've had feelings for someone."
"Then tell her."
"I'm afraid it's too late for that." She left.
The muscle in Nick's jaw tightened.
"But the case isn't finished yet, I thought." "It's not."
"Look, Dad, I know you think I was being a wuss about the case. It was just kind of too weird to deal with. I'm sorry I let you down."
"Don't worry about it. I'll get the evidence I need."
"There's some kids at school who knows what's going on."
"Do you know them?"
"A couple of them. Rumor has it one of the new teachers is involved."
"I know Chase."
"You do?"
"I arrested a guy who was making deals with them."
"And you didn't tell me?"
"I thought the less you knew about it, the safer you'd be."
"Because you think I'm a wuss?"
"No, because you're my son."
"Okay. Then I think you should have arrested Jake when you had the chance."
"Did you know he was involved back then?"
"I knew that he was up to something, but I didn't know what."
Things could get ugly if I go in there arresting people I think are involved, especially if I'm wrong.
So what are you going to do?
I'm going to do what I should have done in the first place.
What's that?
It's okay. I'll take care of it.
Nick assured him. Tuesday morning, Nick met with Martin Hayley at the fire station. He knew that it was a long shot and that he had a better chance of walking into Haysdale and pulling the fire alarm.
You have no idea how much trouble that could cause.
Martin laughed, looking at Nick as if Nick had finally lost his mind.
It's going to work. I just need you to back me on this. I know more than anybody how hard you've been working, but this is crazy. Maybe, but right now I can't think of a better way, can you?
Martin stared at Nick as though mulling over the question in his mind.
Okay, I don't like it, but I'll have my men in place before 2. Thank you. You bet.
Nick and Howard Keeley arrived at Haysdale High School shortly after lunch. Having gotten permission from Principal Philip Grant to take a tour through the building, Nick, dressed in casual attire, escorted Howard without handcuffs through the halls, discreetly peering inside one classroom after another. The process took almost an hour.
He's not a teacher, and we've already checked the office. He's not here,
Howard said. Nick looked up the hallway they had just come down.
Then we'll try Plan B,
Nick said, looking back at Howard. Entering the office, Nick told Howard to have a seat while he went up to the counter.
Sheriff Moran, I almost didn't recognize you without your uniform. What can I do for you?
Mrs. Marsh, the office administrator, asked.
I hope you can help me.
I'll certainly do my best,
she said, all too eager to be of service.
Do you have a photo of your faculty members and other personnel?
You mean like a yearbook?
I need something current for the school year.
Then you need the school directory. If you wait just a moment, I'll get that for you,
the woman said, stepping over to the large metal cabinet against the wall. She opened the door, took out a thin paperback book, and brought it to him.
As you can see, this directory includes photographs, phone numbers, and addresses for faculty and staff. I hope this helps.
That's perfect, thank you,
Nick said, motioning for Howard to take a look at it. Nick watched as Howard went over each page of the directory, taking in the names and faces of each member on staff.
That's him. His name is Ryan Hollis,
Howard said, pointing to the middle-aged man in the picture.
Nice work.
Nick nodded, jotting down Ryan's phone number and address.
Excuse me, Miss Marsh.
Yes, Sheriff Moran. Did you find what you were looking for?
Yes, I did. But I'm wondering if you can tell me if Ryan Hollis is here today.
He should be. Let me see.
She paused with thought.
Mr. Hollis works in the audio-visual department on the 5th floor. Would you like me to page him?
That won't be necessary. Also, would you mind making a copy of this photo?
Certainly. Just a second,
she said, taking the directory to the copier. Nick stood waiting for her at the counter. She had just brought the copy to Nick when the fire alarm went off.
I didn't know we were scheduled for a fire drill this afternoon,
Mrs. Marsh said as similar questions and concerns buzzed from other staffers around the office. The ringing of the alarm sounded over the indistinct chatter of students as they poured out of their classrooms and into the hall. The office door opened. Nick turned around.
Just in time,
he said to himself.
May I have your attention?
Fire Chief Martin Hayley raised his voice, silencing the office.
The fire department was notified of a possible bomb threat in the building.
A bomb?
Mrs. Marsh gasped.
Does Principal Grant know about this?
He phoned it in. Our men are in place to conduct a search. At this time, I'm going to ask that everyone remains calm and evacuate to the secured shelter. I'm sure this is just a precaution. Everything will be fine.
Nick assured them, encouraging Mrs. Marsh and the others to do as the fire chief advised. Martin and Nick spoke privately with the principal as the firefighters came in to begin their search.
Where's Jacob Larson's locker?
Nick asked Philip, who was more than willing to look up the information on file while Howard Keeley stood nearby. Having found the locker in question, Philip unlocked the door and allowed Nick to go through Jacob's things. Under the pile of sweaty gym socks and magazines wedged inside was a small bag of crystallized chunks like that found in Howard Keeley's possession.
Is this what you were expecting to find?
Martin asked Nick as they headed upstairs to the audio-visual room. Howard followed.
It'll certainly help the prosecution get a conviction. Are you going to arrest Larson? Not here. I don't want to make a scene. I'm wondering how many other students have a stash in their lockers. It's safe to assume that Jacob Larson's not the only one. I was afraid you were going to say that. As much as I'd like to help, we just don't have the manpower or the time to search every locker in this building. If Jacob is willing to talk, we won't have to.
Nick said, opening the door to the audio-visual room. Martin looked at Nick.
Will there be anybody left in Callahan who isn't involved in this case? That's a good question.
Nick said. Martin told 2 of his men to wait in the hallway while he accompanied Nick and Howard inside. With exception of the video equipment, nothing seemed questionable or suspicious. Nick pulled open the desk drawers and file cabinets.
What exactly are we looking for?
Martin asked, eyeing the paperwork on the desk.
Anything that doesn't have to do with audio-visual equipment.
Nick said, walking over to the desk to see what he could find. From what he could tell, it was all standard requests from teachers needing equipment for their classes. Nothing out of the ordinary.
I'm assuming you'll need a search warrant for his home also? That is correct. I don't think this Ryan Hollis would be full-headed enough to keep something incriminating here. Sir, you can't go in there.
Someone yelled from the hallway. Nick shoved Howard into the coat closet and shut the door, just as a man walked in. According to the photograph in the directory, it was Ryan Hollis.
Am I interrupting something?
Ryan asked with a curious smirk, his hand resting on the doorknob.
Sir, we're in the middle of conducting a bomb search. You're not supposed to be in here. A bomb in my office. Is this a joke?
Ryan laughed.
The fire department is searching the entire building. You must be Sheriff Moran.
Ryan asked, sizing Nick up.
I'm assuming this is official business, and yet you're not in uniform. Why is that? What can I say? Uniform or not, I'm always on duty. I appreciate the extra precaution you're taking, but as you can see, there's no bomb. That's for the fire department to decide. And another thing, I don't know how you got past those firefighters out front, but I'm going to need you to step outside so the fire chief can do his job. I understand completely.
With his eyes fixed on Nick, Ryan slid the mat over on his desk. He picked up a piece of paper and eased it into his pocket.
I'm sorry for the interruption.
Ryan added, making his way to the door. Nick watched him leave, closing the door behind him. Nick turned to Martin.
Did you see that? He took something from his desk.
Nick said in an accusingly hushed tone.
You said there was nothing here. Obviously something was. Why didn't you arrest him? Because I'm here for a bomb. I would have tipped our hand if I arrested him for stuffing paper in his pocket. Besides, I'd rather watch him lead me to the person he's about to contact. Then we're finished here? Yeah.
Nick said, trying not to sound as defeated as he felt.
I'll tell my men to wrap it up.